Hello, good afternoon. Let me welcome you all to this event entitled Partnerships for Healthy Ecosystems and Sustainable Fisheries, Collaboration between Environmental NGOs and the Fishing Industry. This event is organized by the European Parliament Intergroup on Climate Change, Biodiversity and Sustainable Development, and it is sponsored by the Xunta de Galicia, the regional government of Galicia in Spain. We have three institutional speakers and a group of excellent panelists to try to discuss the main objective of this event, which is to try to showcase those cases of cooperation between environmental NGOs and the fishing industry, to try to demonstrate that environmental NGOs and the fishing industry do not have to be enemies or adversaries, but that actually they can cooperate very meaningfully. And we hope that the presentations this afternoon will show that this is possible, and we will also try to develop through the discussion, identify areas for future collaboration between the two. From the housekeeping point of view, let me just remind you that all participants can ask questions to the panelists by using the Q&A option at the bottom of the screen. And also let me remind you that we have interpretation to two languages, English and Spanish, and that you can choose either language in the interpretation icon at the bottom of your screen. We don't have so much time, so let me just go directly into the first intervention. Let me shift language. Me gustaría dar la bienvenida a nuestro
I would like to welcome our first speaker of this afternoon session, who is Mr. Francisco José Millán. He is a member of the European Parliament for the European People's Party. Mr. Millán has been a member of the European Parliament since 2004 and has also been a member of the Committee on Fisheries since 2014. And between 2019 and 2020, he was the coordinator for the European People's Party in the Committee on Fisheries. So, Mr. Millán, the floor is yours. Thank you very much, Ernesto, and good afternoon, everyone. It is also a pleasure for me to welcome you all to this event. As Ernesto just said, we will be focusing on the collaboration between environmental NGOs, the fishing industry, and science driving sustainability. I'm happy to know that I have many friends and known faces amongst the participants, and hopefully in the future, new friends. First and foremost, I would like to thank the organizers. This has been said by Ernesto himself. First, the Intergroup of the European Parliament on Climate Change, Biodiversity and Sustainable Development, but also the Xunta de Galicia, the Galician government. Thank you both for having granted me the opportunity to host this event, even if it's online, and hopefully the healthcare crisis will dwindle and will allow us to meet in person, because the European Parliament is probably by its own nature one of the most open institutions, and we've been experiencing such a harsh time, just like any other organization. We see this every day. We are a very open institution with many people coming to visit, and for more than 12 months, this has not been the case. Anyway, going back to the webinar today, events such as this one confirm that the protection of oceans is gaining a new attention, both nationally and internationally, from the United Nations headquarters in New York, as well as different fishing ports in A Coruña, or the European Commission. Many of us are concerned about managing marine stocks and its resources. And I'm greeting Rosa Quintana, whom I just saw on the screen. As you know, G7 leaders themselves in their summit during the last weekend mentioned several times in their final statement the role of oceans and the need to conserve and to preserve biodiversity. Obviously, we have a myriad of challenges ahead of us: acidification of waters, overfishing, marine litter, microplastics. They're all threats to the sustainability of oceans. And every time we speak about sustainability, I will not stress that this is only environmental in nature. It's also economic, it's also social in its nature. At the end of the day, if we want to have a healthy marine ecosystem, well, the men and women who earn a living out of sea are the ones that defend this the most. Recently, in the European Parliament, I mentioned that fishermen are not guilty of climate change. They're the victims of it. Fishing, farm fishing are strategic sectors, and they are allies themselves in our fight against climate change and the search for sustainability. Let's think that obviously seafood and fish are top-notch quality products with minimal carbon footprint. Oceans play a vital role in the supply of renewable sources of energy and the creation of new drugs or even vaccines based on marine biodiversity. Which is why we all need to be aware that the rational use of marine resources is a tool in favor of sustainability. And those who demonize fishermen, defending green policies, and even say that we should stop using marine-derived products are wrong. Fisheries are probably one of the most sustainable sectors. I'm speaking about Europe, obviously, under strict control. So we need to teach about people so that they know what our best practices are, which is the term we use at the European Union. So I believe that against this backdrop, today's event will be extremely useful to disseminate collaboration examples among NGOs and the fishing industry in different areas in Europe. Sustainability is a threefold concept. It has an environmental, a social, and an economic dimension. And I would also like to state that there's also a threefold nature of environmental and fishing policy: public institutions, environmental organizations, and the fishing industry. I believe that these three legs, if you allow me to call them that way, should be working hand in hand to ensure sustainability, but also to be realistic. That is why I believe it's extremely positive that in the past few years, many NGOs have joined the decision-making process that the European Union has underway in different consultation fora. I believe that these spaces to exchange opinions are very useful, unlike what happens with propaganda campaigns that lead to nothing. For years, working at the European Parliament, in my experience, when we speak about fisheries, I believe that we should not take anything for granted. There are many regulations and rules, but for them to work in practice, all stakeholders need to appropriate them and not to feel that they are an external imposition, an agenda from somebody else. This is one of the most difficult challenges in the European Union with 400 million people. Obviously, rules need to be standard enough, homogeneous enough, so that we can ensure equal opportunities. However, by the same token, they need to be flexible enough to adjust to our different realities. As a member of the European Parliament and as a member of the Committee on Fisheries, my task, just like many other European members of this committee, is to find a common ground between the European dimension and the local perspective. I need to serve my constituency, in this case, Galicia, by the way, one of the top, one of the leading fishing regions in Europe. But obviously, this doesn't concern me. All politicians dealing with fishing policies have a responsibility. So the mission of the European Parliament is to convey to all stakeholders, in this particular case, the European Commission and NGOs, our national, regional, and local realities. So we need to stick to the ground, or in this particular case, stick to the sea. That is essential if we want a fishing policy to run smoothly. At the end of the day, public representatives need to speak with the fishing industry and NGOs, and NGOs and the fishing industry need to speak among themselves. So it's fundamental for everyone to chip in and to have this fluent communication, both formally within the framework of the institutions in Europe, but also informally. There are many areas in which I believe we could collaborate. I'm speaking about data collection, about catches, so that we can have more reliable scientific estimates that are extremely important when we set the allowable total catch numbers, the fight against illegal fishing, non-regulated fishing, the fight against marine litter. So there's a long list of areas. However, there are a lot of barriers still for dialogue among stakeholders. Many of us have witnessed attitudes in which people mistrust or do not really get to understand one another. And these reluctances are detrimental to us all. We should be united, for instance, working with regional advisory councils. That's why I'm convinced that events such as today's contribute to find a solution, so that we are all brought together, further together, so that we can find a consensus and some kind of common ground. That is why I would like to congratulate once again the organizers behind this initiative. I believe that we are offering new bridges of collaboration between the different stakeholders, be them political, fishing industry, NGOs. We're not enemies. The opposite is true. We are, and we should be natural allies in this common cause for sustainability. So once again, thank you. I'm delighted to once more give the floor to, in this case, Rosa Quintana, the Regional Minister for the Sea and Maritime Affairs. Thank you, Mr. Millán Mon. He is right. We will now give the floor to the Regional Minister for the Sea from the Galician government, Ms. Rosa Quintana Carballo. She is currently the Regional Minister for Maritime Affairs. She began her significant career in 1987, dealing with marine resources and management. So her whole life devoted to this issue, and she's been generous enough to sponsor this event. So, Minister, the floor is yours. Thank you, Ernesto. I'm very happy to have you as the facilitator of this roundtable. Well, whatever I know about the sea, I learned from you. So thank you. I would like to say good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Paco, for his words, but also because he's an advocate, and I know he does this every day at the European Parliament. I would like to also thank the EBCD, collaborating with the Intergroup on Climate Change, Biodiversity and Sustainable Development at the European Parliament for the work that they have undertaken to reach today and to have an event that we were all looking forward to having. So here at the Galician government, we wanted to organize this, for a long time. As Paco said, Galicia is one of the leading fishing regions in Europe, and we have more than 1,500 kilometers of coast. It's a Spanish region, the westernmost part of the country. So the whole region is open to the sea. As a regional minister for fisheries for more than 10 years now, it is a pleasure for me, and I mean this, to see so many friendly faces today, and at the same token, to be able to welcome those who we do not know, and we will have the pleasure to entertain this dialogue for the next 2 hours. We will speak about an issue that concerns us all, the sea, its resources, its people, and how we can help so that next generations can inherit the sea. The sea has given us so much, and it has yet more to give us, as long as we are able to rightly manage all the resources and to utilize everything that the sea gives us. This is a very timely moment because just a few days ago, I had the occasion to celebrate the World's Environmental Day, whose goal for 2021 was to restore ecosystems under the motto, generation, rehabilitation, reimagine, recreate, and restore. So even though the statement of this particular International Day started back in the 70s, apparently, ocean management has become significant today, even though it has always been important within the environmental framework. So right now, as a burning topic, the international agenda decided to focus on the blue area of this planet to avoid the deterioration of the marine ecosystem and the need to defend seas and the ocean. So European initiatives such as the European Green Deal, the farm to fork policy, as well as the guidelines on blue economics or the pollution zero plan are a good testament of this. Some of these tools are very young. Lately, we have created new terms that are now evolving, such as blue economy, sustainable management, maximum sustainable profit or profitability. However, the traditional maritime sectors are fully aware of how valuable this resource is, and it has been for years, either because of their tradition, as well as their connection with their work or the survival of human people and their environment. We're talking about fishermen, people who work at the sea, as well as NGO collaborators. So two groups of people that in the past might have been represented as enemies. However, they all defend the same cause. They're all working and sharing the same language, even though up until now, they've been working in different areas. So with today's webinar, it will be clear that just like the awareness on marine protection is here to stay, the collaboration of all of its stakeholders is also here to stay. It's a need, and we need to be logical about this and consistent, because the only possibility to move forward is to work in a team. So we here at the Galician government, as a public regional government, we are in a privileged situation to initiate activities to defend our coastal communities and to defend the interests of all of our people, which is why we need to preserve our resources, to conserve them. It's the only possibility to make the most of our potential, to have an effective collaboration among NGOs and fishing industries is a clear need nowadays, an outstanding issue. So we here at Galicia, we want to understand that it's necessary to do so, because finally people understand how valuable oceans are. Other people didn't want to see this in the past, but this has to end now. This collaboration is no longer an anecdote for just a few hours of debate. It is a test. It shows that this common ground is not only possible, but it's advisable. And whatever success we may extract from this will be obviously tangible, but will also be long lasting. And it will lay a foundation, which is what we've been fighting for years. So we will not only coin a new fleeting term. I believe that today should be helpful to set up the right collaboration framework for the future, the first of many, so that we can forget about this distinction of a conflicting interest. We today know that it doesn't exist. It is the only possibility for future generations to judge us fairly and to understand that we had in our power the possibility to be constructive, and that's what we did by working together, the fishing industry, NGOs, science, and the administration. So we have a huge task ahead of us, and we will have a chance to observe what kind of results we can obtain from this with this wonderful agenda that has been established for today. I'm looking forward to hearing the interesting projects that will be presented today. So without further ado, I give you the floor, and once again, thank you all for participating.
Y nuevamente mi agradecimiento por haber no solo participado.
Thank you very much, dear Minister, and thank you again not only for participating, but also for sponsoring this event.
She's a director of fisheries policy for the Atlantic, North Sea, Baltic, and outermost regions in DG Mare. And I remember Maya for very long years of struggle and hard work on trying to improve the states of our resources in the European Union. So Maya, welcome very much. Thank you for being with us, and the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Ernesto. And I can only give back the flowers to you. I think the struggle was a struggle that you and I together undertook to improve the state of Europe's oceans. And in the presentation I will give now, we can actually show that you, as a director in DG Mare for many, many years and heads of units beforehand, have contributed massively to where we are today. So at this point in time, I think I also owe a big thank you to you for all the work that you have done when you were working in the European Commission. I will now share my screen with you in the hope that it works. Yes. No, yes, no, now it should be okay. I would like to thank the honorable member of the European Parliament, Mr. Francisco José Millán, for organizing today's event, which I think comes at a very timely moment in time. Let me maybe at the beginning also explain to you what we have achieved already in the EU so far. We have today management plans in all EU sea basins, from the Mediterranean over the Atlantic, over the North Sea, and until even in the Baltic Sea. And we were able to put in place these management plans thanks to the good cooperation between the stakeholders in these sea basins, the NGOs and the fishermen. The NGOs have asked for a long time for these management plans because they understand it's the key to a sustainable management in the long term. And of course, for the fishermen, these plans are also important because if you manage stocks sustainably, that's the source of your income over the next 10 to 20 years. The EU has actually also become a leader in international fisheries organizations. That means we lead the agenda there. We take our sustainability agenda to international organizations, whether it is ICAT, the International Commission for the Conservation of Atlantic Tunas, where, by the way, we have rebuilt bluefin tuna. This was thanks to the efforts of the EU. And there are many more examples that I could give. We now also have a new context. Since the von der Leyen Commission, as you know, we have the 2030 agenda and we have the European Green Deal. And it's important that we achieve a sustainable transformation of the EU's economy. And of course, that must include absolutely also the blue economy. And for us, blue economy is any activity that takes place in the seas, whether we are talking about wind farms, whether we're talking about deep sea mining, or if we're talking about fishing. Everybody is part of the blue economy, and that also includes the stakeholders, again, the NGOs and the fishermen. And it's very clear there can be no green deal, no green without the blue. Blue economy is actually also part of the solution to achieve the European Green Deal, especially when it comes to the objective of becoming carbon neutral by 2050. And as you may know, the Commission has actually recently adopted the Sustainable Blue Economy communication, where we have set out the Green Deal's axis of decarbonization, zero pollution, circularity, biodiversity, and adapting to climate change. And we also want the blue economy to be part and parcel of Europe's recovery from the COVID crisis. And in the end, let me also say, of course, we need the joint efforts across the different blue economy actors and across the EU. And again, the blue economy actors are both fishermen and also the NGOs. What are we doing to this end? We are actually breaking the silos and we're joining forces between the stakeholders in the sea. For example, maritime spatial planning. That helps us to prevent conflicts. We are exploring synergies and we are trying to reconcile nature conservation on the one hand, but also take into account the need for economic development on the other hand. We are also developing sea basin strategies and blue economy strategies for the outermost regions. And while we have to agree on common objectives, of course, it's also extremely vital that we take into account sea basin specificities. At the same time, coordination across borders is also essential, and including also with non-EU countries. And we think that the sea basin strategies actually offer such a framework for cooperation. And then let me also come to ocean literacy. That is very important because European citizens, and especially the young people, as we have seen in the recent 2 years, highly value the health of the oceans, and they support a sustainable approach. The public concern that we have seen in recent years for plastic litter in the ocean actually shows this. And our ocean mission offers a great perspective to raise awareness and also gives the possibility, a platform to the citizens to participate and to be engaged. And under the EU for Ocean Coalition, we will also support creating a network of schools to bring the ocean into the classroom. Let me go to the next slide. Part of breaking silos and joining forces are also very concrete examples. One very concrete example that I can give you is an example when an energy company actually worked together with fishermen, and fishermen were part of planning a wind farm project. This is a very good example that should actually make that should be followed much more often also among stakeholders. Then we are also, as the European Commission, putting in place a new forum. It's called the Sustainable Blue Economy Forum. And that is a forum that we have created for all users of the sea. The idea is that we coordinate a dialogue between offshore operators, stakeholders, so fishermen, NGOs, but also the scientists, people who work in shipping, tourism, renewable energies, anybody who is a user of the sea. Our idea is that we want to bring people together so that there's a dialogue and that we can reconcile the competition for the use of the sea. And then other examples on what we are doing to break silos and join forces are also regional cooperation. We have a regional cooperation in the Baltic Sea that we call Baltfish Forum. It brings together the member states, but also the stakeholders. And they are actually currently working on measures that should protect harbor porpoises from being caught in fishing operations in the Baltic Sea. And we have a mirror example also for the Bay of Biscay. And here in what we call the Southwestern Waters Advisory Council, NGOs and the fishing industry are working together on coming with measures to protect dolphins from being caught in fishing operations in the Bay of Biscay. Let me now go to what we have achieved already in terms of sustainable fisheries. You see that this is the situation in 2020 in the Northeast Atlantic. We have chosen 2020 because it's a bit of an easier year. As you know, 2021 is the first year where we are no longer managing all of these tags that you see here in the outermost left column on our own. We are managing only a small amount by ourselves, some 35 quotas, and all the rest is managed either with Norway or with the UK. What we have achieved to date is that we have increased our sustainable fisheries from only 5 in 2009 to over 60 today. So you see here in 2020, the number was 62 sustainable fisheries in line with MSY. What this overview also shows you is that in the EU, that's the column on the very left hand side, we are doing very well. And when you look at the column all the way to the right, these are the so-called coastal state stocks, the straddling stocks in the Northeast Atlantic, such as mackerel, blue whiting, herring. Here we are struggling. We're struggling because it seems difficult for all the coastal states, Norway, Russia, Faroe Island, Iceland, and the EU to agree on a sustainable management. We very much want to manage these fisheries also with MSY, and we are continuing the dialogue to this end with the other coastal states. Now, I've told you what we have achieved, but I also don't want to hide from you that we are not fully there yet. I think it's very important that we are honest about the things that we still want to achieve and where we think we can do better. Let's first talk about regionalization. Regionalization is a new element in this reformed common fisheries policy. It's still in the childhood years. It was only really invented in 2013. So you see, it's less than 10 years old. It's going to maternelle, as we would say in Belgium. We want stakeholders and member states to work together better and to use the possibility that the new policy has given them, namely to agree measures in regionalization which are tailor-made for their sea basin. We have regional groups for each sea basin. We have one for the southwestern waters that covers the Iberian Sea and the Bay of Biscay. We have one for the North Sea, and we have one for the Baltic, and of course also for the Mediterranean. We think we can do much better there. We also want to be better when it comes to setting tax in line with the precautionary advice. You had seen on the previous slide that we're doing very well when it comes to MSY, advised tax, but when it comes to precautionary advice, it is not always the same story. So we want to improve also on the precautionary advice management. And then we also want to keep the standards that we have achieved over the last 2 decades in the EU when it comes to managing the fish stocks that we now share with the United Kingdom, but also with Norway and the other coastal states. And there are many more examples. I will stop here, and at the end, I would just like to give you the motto, be green, go blue, and I would thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maya, for this very interesting presentation. And that completes the 3 institutional presentation. And now we move immediately into the 6 panels, which will present specific cases of cooperation between the industry and other stakeholders, particularly environmental NGOs. And without any further delay, the first one, I will only remind all the 6 panelists that we have limited time, so please try to stick as much as possible to the 10 minutes you have for your presentation. So the first intervention is by Ms. Catherine Barrett. Ms. Catherine Barrett is a Fisheries Development Officer of the Bordis Caimara, so the Ireland's Seafood Development Agency, and she currently works on the Irish program for fishing for litter. So please, Ms. Barrett, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ernesto. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
You can, perfectly. Thank you. No, so thank you for letting us share our story about our Clean Oceans Initiative, which is funded by the Commission at a national level. So just as an introduction, so in terms of, we have a various number of projects and programs, and we've pulled them all together under one Clean Oceans Initiative because there was different activities, but we felt that it actually pulled and made that very net effect and a positive effect on the ocean and on operations. So we kind of broke it into a number of kind of pillars, and the most famous, where a lot of across all the member states, where a lot of this began, was in that Fishing for Litter program that is now 20 years old. And working with the industry, we've moved that out further to doing more referencing and establishing baselines around the impact, and also around how much plastic is potentially there as in terms of end of life, and also what are the commercial pathways for some of that. We also try to apply the circular economy principles to our work, and also working, as you say, and Mr. Mann was very clear, working on that on the ground. How do we reach our stakeholders? How do we reach those in the community that we need to work with? So just a small part. So we started officially Fishing for Litter at a national scale in 2015. It's voluntary, there's no payment to the boats, but it gave ownership and leadership on specific actions that only they could do. Only they are fishing in those waters, and it is only them that can actually bring in that amount of litter. So to date, they've brought in ashore 608 over 608 tons of marine litter. And, you know, we set up a national registration program. So we have, you know, we try to, you know, position the boats to saying you're a member, and also that their crew members are recognized. And we also have industry-led aquaculture cleanups as well as part of the Clean Oceans. So why did we move from fishing for litter to Clean Oceans? As we already heard in some of the early discussions, there's some key directives coming, and then we have key overarching EU policies like the plastics economy, the Green Deal, the circular economy. So we felt that, you know, working with industry and our partnerships, this is an opportunity to help take control of those impacts and actually leverage the expertise in the sector and help to manage that economic cost. And in the meantime, and while we're doing that, we're trying to communicate a cohesive communication to the wider public as well as to our stakeholders for that social trust and social license. You know, in terms of engaging with the partnerships, you know, we're collating expertise, you know, and we didn't want to have division. So I think, you know, as Mr. Mann said earlier, we all have the same objective, and, you know, is tapping into various stakeholders and relationships that we all want the same thing. A fisherman wants a healthy ocean for his catch and for his TAC. So it was, you know, we're trying to find these common objectives that wasn't divisive. We also engaged with them to help acknowledge their efforts, both inside and outside the sector. And that's a lot what we do with the NGOs. And also, you know, the sector is best placed to see on the ground where these improvements can be made. And, you know, in terms of that journey, gathering and garnering that support from all the stakeholders so we can all move forward. And that's effectively why we pulled how the Clean Oceans is galvanizing that together. The sector itself is very active itself in its local communities with NGOs. You know, a lot of fishermen are participating voluntarily in the Coast Guard, in the local lifeboat, in football clubs, in development groups, in local tidy towns. So participating in fishing for litter or Clean Oceans was actually not a big ask. They already do it in these regional communities. Everybody needs to work together for a thriving rural fishing community. You know, we also partnered in particular with one NGO, Clean Coast. So they're a leading NGO with extensive community engagement, and they are a national environmental education unit. And, you know, they have loads of really fantastic campaigns that they run throughout the year. And we participate as BIM and Clean Coast on a number of them. So they would do a roadshow coming up to our spring clean, we call it, and we would communicate some of the activities we're doing with fishermen in that local area, again, to build that social trust. The lady in the previous photo, she has participated in their ocean talks, both here nationally in Ireland, but actually she was also invited to Australia. So the Fishing for Litter and Clean Oceans has given industry a platform to really talk passionately about the positive side of the sector. And that's been really, really positive, really, in terms of keeping the momentum going in this area. And we also partnered with them on they have an annual Ocean Hero Award. So we partnered with them to sponsor the Fishing Community of the Year. And that was really, really fantastic. And all parts of the fishing community came out, and they participated with local children, and it was just fantastic. We also are a member on the steering committee of the Irish Ocean Literacy Network, and same with Clean Coast. So again, you know, putting that evidence-based communications there together, and they have their hashtag We Are Islanders, which is a very strong, again, kind of galvanizing image and not divisive. And that's been very helpful to help kind of move and communicate some of the activities that both the sector is doing. But fundamentally, the problem, is they have, what do we do with our end of life gear? And we see that coming with our single-use plastics directive, the port reception facilities directive. But actually from that, so the fishing for litter galvanized the industry to go, yeah, we can bring in marine litter, but what do we do? How do we manage our impact on the marine environment? How do we not have this in our ports around the country? So it, and again, an industry led, they wanted us to do more in this area. So we had a project called SmartNet, bringing together a lot of the expertise to help us move the dial and understand more what a new system will look like for a healthy ocean. It's not just going to happen on the water. We need huge support from the onshore. And also on the back of this, as you know, the EN 416 and industry. So we have two net makers on this with BIM expertise. So we have a gear technologist and myself on the national authority delegation team, but industry want to be part of this to improve the outcome for the end of life of gear. These are really positive things. That we're not just with the policies and the reporting, this implementation piece. So this is a report that came out last week from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and it really resonated with me. We need to build those capacities. We need the support, the tech, and the innovation to scale, to move it from just reporting. We want that creativity and accessing that Green Deal, accessing that circular economy. And in terms of other synergies that we have for sustainable fisheries, we also have a program on developing, a national program on developing FIPS, and we follow the guidelines of Sustainable Fisheries Partnership and Fishery Progress. They're co-funded with the BMFF. They're independently facilitated, and it's evidence-based from both our conservation scientists and our national scientists from the Marine Institute. But also because, as you might remember, we have 244 boats signed up to participate in fishing for litter in clean oceans. And even though we have our international MSC framework and indicators for fisheries management, they actually said we want it labeled, we want to put it in here as well. So they have actually put clean oceans in as an action to support, because they see the impact that clean oceans have and the activities that we're doing with them for these healthy ecosystems and sustainable fisheries. And that was an industry, so in terms of, sometimes we can say, well, we approach the industry with one project and another, but actually from their point of view, they see all of these working in sequence. So it's been really positive that they've linked and they see the benefits of working on clean oceans and the impact it has on sustainable fisheries and working with these other NGOs. So we have 8 fisheries listed at the moment, and as I said, each plan has recommendations to retrieve marine litter and also to work with us in developing clean ocean programs to help on those pillars for a clean ocean. So that's it for me. So thank you very much from the Clean Oceans Initiative, and I hope that was worthwhile. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Catherine. And I can tell you that as far as I'm concerned, it was really worthwhile. It was extremely good. Thank you very much again, Catherine.
Thank you very much.
Just a small housekeeping question before introducing the next speaker. I see that a certain number of participants are using the option of raising hand to ask questions. I think we kindly advise all those participants wanting to ask questions to the panelists to use instead the question and answer option at the bottom of your screen. And then we will note those questions in writing, and we will ensure that the panelists have a chance to answer them in the 20 minutes allocated to the questions and answers. Then our next speaker is Mr. Douglas Rader. He's the Chief Ocean Scientist of the Environmental Defense Fund, and he currently advises EDF leadership on the scientific aspects of policies and programs affecting the oceans. Douglas, floor is yours.
Good day. I hope that is that showing the correct view, please?
Yes.
Great. Okay. I'm going to share with you today an example from across the pond of a successful collaboration focused on the conservation of deep water coral reefs. The area that I'll be talking about is the U.S. Southeast Atlantic. So even though the management entity is called the South Atlantic Fishery Management Council, it actually is the Middle Western Atlantic. Beginning in 1996, this body of 4 states, fishers and others, scientists, managers, was charged with new authority to manage fisheries sustainably, to protect fishery-related habitats, and also to begin managing for marine ecosystem outcomes. They actually were a very forward-looking council. and had already acted just before that time to prohibit the use of fish traps and also trawl gear to protect shallow water corals. So that pushed fishers into deeper water and then deeper water, first into the middle part of the shelf where this animal at the top, rock shrimp, is common, and then into even deeper water where royal red shrimp and golden crabs are common and are looked after. But it turns out that the first step of this progress from moving away from the shallow water coral reefs did not go well at all, because by the time the gears of government ground and put in place a marine protected area to protect what turned out to be an important mid-depth coral reef that was occupied by an animal called Oculina in a bank setting. By the time that actually happened, almost all of that area had already been destroyed by bottom disturbing fishing gears. And so then, when in 1996 and 7, I started working, and Environmental Defense Fund and our fellow non-governmental organizations started working with the South Atlantic Council, we found out from scientists that they were discovering hitherto unknown, huge and ancient coral reefs in the even deeper water farther offshore on a secondary plateau. So not the continental shelf, but the secondary plateau called the Blake Plateau, from a couple of 200 or so meters down to 1,000 meters and deeper. This was occupied by very large reefs built by corals called Lophelia, up to 150 meters tall and operating down to 1,000 meters in depth. So therefore, we were worried from the story of what had happened to Oculina banks about how to protect this world treasure. It turned out that I had accepted the chairmanship of a panel called the Habitat Environmental Protection Advisory Panel. It included fishers, it included scientists, it included managers, representatives of the states. And there was a quick consensus of that body to protect 100% of the high profile Lophelia reefs in these deeper waters. And the South Atlantic Fishery Management Council agreed and directed us to proceed to characterize these reefs, to propose them as what are called habitat areas of particular concern, and then to move through a comprehensive habitat amendment for all of the fishery management plans that operate in that region to protect those against all bottom disturbing activities by fishing, and in theory from all other kinds of bottom disturbing efforts as well. Now, as you all know, it turns out that fisheries management is the proverbial hairball where many, many different interests are represented, and where, unless you have people's interests in mind, decisions can very much go the wrong direction. It was very clear to us that the fishers that were formally involved in these very complicated negotiations before the council did not include those smaller groups of fishermen that were most interested in the newly developing fisheries of the deeper waters in and around these high profile deep water coral reefs, and particularly those that were focused on royal red shrimp and then also on golden crab, the other two species that I showed you before. Royal red shrimp are harvested with bottom tending trawls. Golden crabs are harvested with chained together, very large and heavy deep water traps. If you've ever seen The Most Dangerous Catch for crabs in the North Pacific, you would get the idea. Now, it's not weather like the North Pacific, but this area is subject to very extreme currents from the Gulf Stream moving south to north up along this area. And so that anchoring is nearly impossible. In any event, it was really clear that, particularly in the South, that the prevalence of these deep water reefs and those two uses of bottom disturbing gears was very high, and that in order to put together a package that would work, then we would have to work directly with those groups of fishers in order to design a plan that would work. And I will just tell you right now, from Environmental Defense Fund's perspective, the solutions that are built together with fishers and with fishing communities are the ones that work, because they are done properly, are designed with the best interest of fishers in mind in the long term. And we have found
también de todo el mundo a largo plazo, con lo cual este tipo de procesos nos parecieron muy productivos. De hecho, lo hemos visto en todo el mundo. En este caso hay dos mapas que parecen un poco complejos. El segundo, el de la derecha.
At the top, ultimately, by spending more than a year working directly with fishers, and actually them providing to us detailed data on exactly where they were fishing with those gears, the start and stop points for each one of their fishing endeavors, we were able to find a win-win, to map out those areas which included the high profile and that could be then protected without unduly interfering with fishing. Now, it turns out that it's in the fisher's best interest not to hang up trawls or traps in currents like this anyway, because that's the way that boats sink and people die. So because of that win-win opportunity, we were able to identify places where golden crab fishing gear would be allowed and would not, and ways that it would be fished and not impinge on the reefs, and the same independently with shrimp, working directly with the individuals, but also the associations of deep water shrimpers and golden crabbers. And I'll just tell you that this outcome actually was exactly the opposite of what happened on Oculina banks. It was mowed down before it occurred. Actually, I forgot to tell you one important thing. The other limitation often is getting the data you need from the scientists, because scientists like to publish their results and get credit for having done the work. And what had happened in the Oculina case is the council didn't get the data until it was published. In this case, we got real-time data from the ships into the boardroom to be able to make sure that we knew everything about where the corals were, and real-time data from the fishers to look at where they could prosecute their fishery without unduly impacting the fishery. Now, you see that I haven't put any names on here or any thanks to organizations or to fishers organizations, but that's because there's so many of them involved. And really, this could not have happened unless the science community, the NGOs, the management community, including those 4 states and the federal government, and all of the fisheries organizations were working together, negotiating trade-offs to be able to get to yes, and the yes that works for people and nature together. So that's my story today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Douglas. Extremely interesting presentation as well. Let's move to the next one. This is by Mr. Colin Atwood, who's an associate professor on marine ecology and fisheries at the University of Cape Town in South Africa. And for much of his career, he evaluated the role of marine protected areas in the conservation of fisheries. So Colin, floor is yours.
Thank you, Aneska, and I hope you can hear me, and I hope you can see my screen.
Yes. Good. Good.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to tell you about the South African story. I'd like to tell you about the interactions between environmental interests as represented by NGOs and our large industrial scale fishing companies. Many of you might not be familiar with the South African setting and its fishing industry. So I'll spend a few minutes giving you a short but necessary introduction to the fishing environment in South Africa. South Africa has a mature and diverse fishing industry. Here I show a number of photos representing the major sectors, as many as I could squash onto one screen. We currently harvest around 700,000 tons per annum, including about 600 species of fish, invertebrates and plants, excluding aquaculture harvests. The bulk of the catch is taken by trawlers and purse seiners. But it started late in South Africa. The purse seiners began in 1943. Trawling began in the year 1900. And prior to that, fish were caught by manually operated lines. I mention this because our fish stocks went from pristine to optimally or overexploited in less than 150 years, and most of them in a lot shorter time than that. So always in living memory. We have seen massive changes, and I believe it's because we've seen such a big change over such a short period of time that this has strengthened the conservation community and the awareness of the problems of overfishing. The relationships among the fishing industry are dominated by the interactions that I've shown here. It's the government that regulates who may fish and allocates quotas, either as tonnages or in terms of effort. Reported catches and survey data are used to assess fish stocks and to determine catch adjustments and other restrictions as recommended by the government research agencies. The research agency has strong connections to universities. A separate research agency deals with biodiversity conservation, and recently this has made important interventions in the regulation of fishing. On the other side of my plot, you'll see the environmental NGOs, and they have direct interests in the management of fishing too. They range in size and in focus, and importantly, they also range in their modus operandi. Some of them like to engage constructively in negotiations and in practical operations with fishermen, but others take a far more adversarial role, challenging policy and fishing operations. In this talk, I'll focus on the former strategy. They are the more dominant environmental NGOs in South Africa, and the one which I believe have had the far greater success. Also shown here are the eco-labels, which have had a very pivotal role in South Africa. I'll talk about that later. South Africa also has an extremely high rate of unemployment, which presents a massive challenge for reforms aimed at sustainability. I show the labor unions here, but in fact, government policy has also made it difficult to reduce fishing effort, particularly in the artisanal and subsistence sectors. The challenges to environmental sustainability in fisheries are quite predictable. In no particular order, I highlight corruption, overfishing, and it is of the type driven by too many unemployed people. It's what we'd call Malthusian overfishing rather than corporate greed. There are problems related to bycatch, endangered, threatened, and protected species interactions, and also importantly, the sustainability of monitoring programs. The government has run short of money in some cases and cannot continue these programs. Some important history: the Benguela Ecology Program was a well-funded research program that began in 1982 and continued for 2 decades thereafter. It was a formal, multi-institutional research project that involved universities, museums, and government research agencies. A wide range of research projects included the ecological impacts of fishing, which set the foundation for an ecological approach to fisheries, which slowly gained acceptance in the years that followed. Because of this program, South Africa developed a strong research capability, and many of the people who were trained in marine science now work for NGOs and fishing consultancies. So there's a lot of scientific capacity outside of the government. A massive contribution by an NGO was in the field of the ecosystem approach to fisheries, or EAF. South Africa struggled with implementing the EAF. The EAF invites a lot of complexity and challenges existing protocols. Neither the government nor the fishing industry could tackle this alone. The EAF in South Africa was supported by ecological risk assessments for all major fisheries in South Africa, and this process was led by the WWF South Africa. Similarly, South Africa recently expanded its protected area network to cover 5% of its EEZ by adding 20 offshore marine protected areas. This was the result of a 7-year project drawing on vast sets of spatially indexed databases, a consultative process led by the South African National Biodiversity Institute and drawing on decades of research. An excellent example of NGO involvement in problem solving is seabird mortality caused by fishing gear. Unacceptably and unsustainably high rates of mortality on longline hooks and trawl warps were documented in the 1990s. Something had to be done. Work was funded by NGOs, and later the same NGOs helped the industry to trial new types of fishing gear. The industry approached WWF South Africa and asked them to assist in reducing their impact. Bird scaring lines, managing the dumping of offal, removing sticky grease from trawl warps, and reducing setting times were the chief mitigation measures that were tested and applied. And it was a remarkable success. Seabird mortality decreased by 85% on trawl warps and 99% on longline gear. Here's a photograph showing the bird scaring lines alongside a trawl warp. A partnership developed between environmental NGOs and the largest industrial fishing companies. This is known as the Responsible Fisheries Alliance. The purpose was to provide a forum for environmental NGOs and the responsible fishing companies to work together. The motivation was to assist participating fisheries to respond proactively to the growing need of informed consumers. A number of their projects include spatial fisheries management, the effects of seismic surveys, monitoring of endangered, threatened, and protected species interactions, the sustainability of non-target species, analyzing penguin abundance data, policy development, and codes of conduct. I have to say that collaboration between the environmental NGOs and fishing companies has been facilitated by the eco-labels, the Marine Stewardship Council and the South African Sustainable Seafood Initiative have brought consumers into the management process. In some respects, criteria for eco-certification surpasses government regulatory requirements. Much of South Africa's product is exported, so it was critical that eco-certification was attained. NGOs and consultancies have been keen to assist fishing companies in reducing their ecological footprint and to comply with certification requirements. In demonstrating a willingness to limit damage to the seabed, the trawl footprint was frozen. And I'll show you a picture of that in a minute. Notable collaborative projects included inspection of the seabed for trawl-related damage, monitoring of fishing gear impacts on seabirds, monitoring on catches of endangered, threatened, and protected species, and mapping of vulnerable marine ecosystems. This is the trawl footprint that was ring-fenced. The areas in green are where the trawlers operate. They will no longer go outside of that area, so they will not cause new damage to areas outside of what is in green. Apart from that, there are a number of areas in beige, which are marine protected areas, and as you can see, some of these interrupt the trawl lanes. This was the result of a large consultative process. The industry also cooperated into research on the trawl bed. In 2014, the industry agreed to stop trawling in 3 lanes off the Cape West Coast so that researchers could monitor the recovery of benthic life. the rerouting of their trawlers shows the extent to which the industry was willing to cooperate in experiments to document the extent to which their nets have damaged the seabed and to be part of a solution to protect vulnerable ecosystems on which they depend. Another project between NGOs and the fishing industry is an attempt to manage the so-called bycatch species in trawl fisheries. Previously, these catches have been unmonitored or poorly monitored, and efforts have been made to record and identify non-target species in the catches. The possibility of extending catch restrictions to a wider range of species is now considered. Trawl skippers have cooperated with researchers to supply information and specimens of deep sea corals and other benthic life caught in trawl nets. The intention is to map the vulnerable marine ecosystems on the Agulhas Bank and then to steer trawlers from such areas. The Responsible Fisheries Alliance has supported work on spatial fisheries management in a project led by the Safeguard Our Seabed Coalition in a collaborative project with an NGO called the Center for Environmental Rights. I encourage all of you to watch the movie link that I give below as one of many initiatives to raise awareness among fishers of the diversity in the deep sea on which they depend. So in conclusion then, the fishing companies in South Africa have expressed and demonstrated a commitment to work towards environmental sustainability. Some NGOs have been willing to provide practical and analytical support to fishing companies and to government to improve sustainability. Fishers have helped researchers with the supply of data and specimens. A number of formal alliances have developed between industry, NGOs, and the government. I won't say that it's always been plain sailing. There have been some strained situations caused by ideological differences, and sometimes people phone their lawyers. But the prevailing atmosphere has been one of cooperation. I'll leave it at that, and thanks for listening to me.
Thank you very much indeed, Colin, for this interesting presentation. And let me congratulate you on the quite remarkable success in inter alia reducing seabird mortality. That's really very impressive. So let's move on to the next speaker. He's Daniel Formoso. He is the president of the Provincial Federation of Fishermen's Guilds, the Cofradías, and he has been for 14 years the head of the Fishermen's Guild of the port of Muros in Galicia. Daniel.
Hola, ¿se escucha?
Hello, can you hear me? Yes, but we cannot see you, Daniel. We can hear you, but we cannot see you. It's the host. The host needs to turn our cameras on. You all have your cameras on if you want to. You just have to turn them on. They are enabled. So Daniel, your camera is enabled.
Se te oye, pero todavía no se te ve.
We can hear you, but we can't see you. We can see you now. Perfect. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting us to participate here. Thank you very much to the European Parliament Intergroup on Climate Change, Biodiversity, and Sustainable Development. I am Daniel Formoso, and I'm coming to you from Galicia. I am the president of the Provincial Federation of Fishermen's Guild and the president of the Fishermen Guild of Fisterra and Muros. I would like to explain to you what a fisherman's guild is. As you know, the guild are an organization that is not very common in Europe, but it's very characteristic in Spain because we are traditionally a fishing culture. The guild represents our interests as a sector, the interest of the ship owners and the fishermen. The Guild is also committed to promoting sustainability and the social cohesion of our fishing communities. So we organize ourselves in fishermen's guilds to work hand in hand with public administrations and to consult with them. In my case, as the president of the Federation of A Coruña, we represent all of the guilds in this province. Also, there is a regional organization and a national organization. This way, we can communicate better and represent better the interest of all the fishermen and communicate in events like this one. Today, I would like to talk about some specific projects that we are developing with scientists and with the administration to improve the sustainability and the quality of our coasts. I will talk to you about the Mar Limpio initiative, Clean Sea initiative. We are interested in conserving and preserving our resources because without resources, we would not be able to carry out our activities. We depend on those resources. The local communities depend on those resources, and the future generations depend on those resources. This project is an initiative by the Galician government, and it is funded partially by the EMFF. It is a collective project for the recovery of marine biodiversity. The goal is collaborating with local communities for their own benefit and for the general benefit. We want a clean, a healthy and productive and a diverse marine environment. We want to decrease the amount of marine litter in the coast. We want to integrate good practices, best practices in fishing activities that contribute to the sustainable exploitation of resources. Within this initiative, we have organized some educational conferences to raise awareness on these issues, generally on marine litter. And during these conferences, we talk about how important it is for everyone to be aware of the fact that we cannot put litter into the sea. And this litter is generated by human activities, and it inevitably ends up in the sea. This is the case of agricultural activities, of farming, or of extractive activities, of manufacturing activities. There are two phases. First of all, training of those who will carry out the activities, and a second phase that is collecting the waste, active collection or passive collection of waste. The second phase, the collection phase, is carried out with professionals, with a skill development and capacity development process so that we can develop the capacities of those who will carry out this activity so that they can be aware of the importance and of what they are doing. It also implies having places to stock this waste. This waste mainly comes from fishing activities and from other kinds of activities, but there are other kinds of waste generated by other economic activities. But the goal is to collect all of the waste that should not be in the ecosystem. Apart from raising awareness, we give visibility to the whole sector and we preserve the coasts. We keep the coast healthy. It is the first time that the EMFF is used for this kind of initiative, for the protection and for the recovery of biodiversity and of marine ecosystem in the framework of fishing activities. This initiative is specifically thought for fishermen's guilds, for marine cooperatives, for professional associations, for NGOs that can also participate in this initiative, working hand in hand with us and with the public administration and with local groups. These projects are new in 2020 and 2021. And the sector welcomes this kind of project because they help to improve the image of fishermen. Fishermen are sometimes criminalized due specifically to this waste. The incentives provided to promote waste collection promotes the participation and the engagement of the sector. Of course, we need to bear in mind that fishermen fish. That's their job. We cannot believe that a fisherman, just because they have a vessel, must collect waste. So we need to have incentives. It would be impossible for them to collect all of the waste they see in the street, for example, and take it to a clean point or taking to the waste collection point. The Fishermen's Guild of Noia is a very interesting example. They have a budget of more than 200,000 euros for 2020 and 2021 to collect waste. There's an incentive for each day for each of the 171 fishermen that participate in this initiative. We also carry out a study of the patterns of the waste collection to know what actions we need to carry out further. This is not the only project. There are 6 additional projects. For example, one for the active collection of waste in Cedera, a municipality in the north of the region that has almost 7,000 inhabitants. 19 fishermen participate in the project in this municipality that also includes training and conferences. There's also the Ría Sostenible del CAD project, of which I am the chair. In the framework of this project, it is vessels that collect the waste within their usual fishing activities. In this case, 5 fishermen guilds participate in the project: Lira, Pindos, Noia, and Cordolzón. All in all, thanks to this initiative, we can promote collaboration within the fishing sector and with NGOs, but also with citizens and with the public administration. We collect waste, we organize periodical cleanups, and we take up different activities. So we are very proud to include these activities in our daily lives, something that we can already see the results of. For example, fishermen participate in this initiative, and this is positive for governance, it's positive for the administration, and it's positive for the fishermen. And more than 60% of the plans of this initiative for the next year already approved. Many of the members of the fishing industry participate in this initiative. We hope that these projects raise awareness among the citizens and are scaled to other municipalities in other countries to raise awareness in all coastal areas in Europe. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Daniel. Your presentation has been extremely interesting. I'm very happy to see that Galicia is taking steps in the right direction. The next presentation will be done by Pedro Ferreiro, who is the head of fisheries and markets of Sustainable Fisheries Partnership, and Emilio Martinez Cadilla, who is the Director General of Espaderos del Atlántico S.A. Pedro and Emilio, you have the floor.
Bueno, antes de nada, dar las gracias a todos. Ernesto, gracias por la presentación.
First of all, thank you very much, Ernesto. Thank you for introducing us. Hopefully you are already able to see my screen. Are you? Can you see my screen? I take it you can. We can hear you, but we do not see your PowerPoint presentation. Now we can see it.
Pues hoy estamos aquí, entonces, nada, bueno, dar las gracias a los organizadores, obviamente, por habernos
Thank you
invitado.
again to the organizers for inviting us to present here. Today, I would like to present this initiative that has luckily already been presented in one of the previous presentations, so you are already familiarized with our logo and with the activities that we carry out. I would like to explain the origin of this FIP Blues project that will be presented by my colleague later on. Sustainable Fisheries Partnership is an international marine conservation NGO founded in 2006, dedicated to helping seafood supply chains function in an environmentally friendly fashion. We engage and partner with companies worldwide to improve fisheries and aquaculture within their supply chains. And for that, we harness the market tools and the influence to drive sustainability in fisheries and supply chains. What is our mission? Maintain ocean and aquatic systems health, improving fishing and aquaculture production activities to ensure future availability, deal with the social challenges of fishing, and improve the situation of fishing communities and their members. It's also very important to say what we don't do, because we are an environmental NGO, but we are not a traditional environmental NGO, and many of you, I'm sure, don't know us. That is because we do not work with civil society, we do not organize campaigns, we do not impose a sustainability policy. The companies that we work with have their own teams and they have their own definitions of sustainability and the policies that they are prepared to implement. We do not certify fisheries, and of course, we are not an eco-labeling program. These are some of the companies we work hand in hand with. So as you can see, is basically distribution companies, food services, and suppliers, famous companies. How do we work? We use a top-down model. We start with the providers and get to the fisheries, but we also work with a bottom-up model, looking for market incentives for companies that want to implement sustainability measures because the market needs to recognize their improvement. And we work based on two principles: information and improvement. SFP is recognized for pioneering in the FIP model. We developed this model that later on became very popular and was adopted by many NGOs and foundations that work on fisheries management. So what is an FIP? It is a multi-stakeholder effort to address environmental or social challenges in a fishery. These projects harness the power of the private sector to incentivize positive changes towards sustainability. How do FIPs work? Well, first of all, we need collaboration. All of the stakeholders that want to advance jointly need to work hand in hand. Secondly, planning. So a previous analysis of the challenges of this fishery. Once we know these challenges, we need to create an action plan to address them. Then we need to invest in order to be able to implement those actions. And then credibility arrives with monitoring and reporting of those activities. So everything we do is publicly reported so that third parties can be aware that we deliver what we say we will deliver. We deliver our goals. We want to guarantee transparent governance. We want to advise FIPs on funding models for improvements. We want to help develop strong public-private alliances. We want to provide scientific and technical capacity when required, because sometimes in the projects that we work with, we don't see this scientific and technical capacity and we need to provide it. And lastly, we assess FIP projects. So the NGOs that create these FIPs later need to assess the improvement. So we do not lead the FIPs, but we assess their progress. We always try to have the engagement of the market, because experience has taught us that improvements are only here to stay when the market recognizes them. This is also closely linked to the participation of the administration and the production sector. These are the three pillars for the success of FIPs. Since 2003, when the first FIP was created in Alaska, we have seen a deep increase. By the end of 2020, we have seen more than 240 FIPs. The website that includes the progress of all of these FIPs is fisheryprogress.org. Firstly, it focused on North America, Europe, and international waters, but specifically on fisheries that provide for the North American markets. However, from SFP, we are developing new tools and implementing them. And actually, we have currently a project in the Philippines to adapt these tools to the needs of small-scale artisanal fisheries of the global south. So fisheries that feed developing countries and are therefore key. When we started working with these companies, we could see that many of them worked with Spanish longline fisheries, and we decided to start working on this specific FIP. And this is a clear example of what fisheries can do to have the recognition of the markets in North America and Europe while they continue working. And that's all from me. So Emilia, you have the floor.
Stop sharing aquí, perdón, listo. Sobre ti, Emilio.
Over to you, Emilia. Can you hear me? Can you see my screen?
Sí.
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Emilia, the floor is yours. Thank you. Well, first and foremost, I would like to thank the organizers and the sponsors of this event. I congratulate you on this initiative, and hopefully it will continue in the future, because we believe these possibilities for dialogue are necessary, both from the blue and the green side, so that these kind of oppositional, confrontational dynamics, which obviously has its own conflict, hopefully we can do away with it. And I know that NGOs and the industry share the same goals. FIPLUS is an action scheme to improve the sustainability of the species caught by the European fleet of surface longliners. It applies to two species, a swordfish and a special kind of shark that is very important for us, which is blue sharks. And we also place significant relevance or attention to other species that are sensitive from an eco-social point of view, such as the mako shark. Now, the stakeholders in this project are as follows. First, the fishery producers associations, Marine, and many others that are here on the screen, and they account for 90% of the catches in the European Union, which is equivalent to 160 boats, 95% of European Union fishing over all of its oceans. So on another side, an important actor in this project is the transforming and marketing industry with the National Association of highly migratory migrant species association. So with all the stakeholders participating, it accounts for one of the leading FIPs all over the world. And the industry, and by that I mean 14 companies that account for more than 80% of the European Union supply chain. I would like to also ask you to understand the role that this transforming and marketing industry association plays, so much so that we have set up an association to give a broader coverage. The goals of this association, the ANECTEAM National Association, is to cooperate among companies to promote the FIP, also to transfer to the public opinion the commitment to sustainability of the whole industry, to promote good practices, to implement measures to improve sustainability, to collaborate as well in terms of public administration and environmental organizations, and finally to promote actions to ensure food safety through the cooperation among public and private institutions that promote public health. I would also like to underline that FIPLUS, unlike other top to bottom FIPs, in this case, it's not a company on top that invites smaller stakeholders. This one is bottom up. It is made up by all producers and companies that market the product of this fishery. So they have all played a role in this project since its inception, and we have all had a chance to reflect upon different aspects, not only the economic dimension. So we reflect upon sustainability from the point of view of the environmental sense of the word, but also the whole paradigm of sustainability. Sure, the environmental side is important, but alongside with it, sustainability from an economic and social point of view as well. Now, what are the goals, sorry about this, that this FIP wishes to achieve? Well, first, to bring fisheries to higher sustainability standards, the ones that are broadly recognized. Secondly, to ensure access to all markets for the catches of these fleet and to differentiate itself from fleets from third countries that operate with lower standards or with no standards, to improve scientific knowledge of fisheries and to collaborate with the whole scientific community, and to ensure some surface longline fishery that is understood to be sustainable, responsible, and internationally recognized, and finally to search for new partners and stakeholders, both public and private. For instance, we have the Galician regional ministry present during this event. They are one of our partners. We're very grateful for their support. Now, in terms of the development, implementation, and monitoring, we use reference standards, these FIP Blues. First, the tools and methodologies based on the MSC that measure fishery performance and progress over time, as well as the regular monitoring and control by fishery progress, which is, as you know, a platform that assesses and evaluates all headway made by the FIP. Last but not least, as in any other FAP, we designed a working plan, and it's a 5-year plan, but obviously can be expanded. There's also an action plan behind it. And very briefly, I would like to say that all of these options are important, yet we need to understand that the producing industry, Galician owners have been committed with the sustainability of the fleet for years now. So from that viewpoint, I would like to mention just some examples. One of the few fleets that decided not to catch a list of non-target sharks. It has been pioneer as well, dealing with the TAC in blue sharks, which is a species that is very sensitive in our case. This fleet has also spearheaded this initiative because it has always fought illegal and unmonitored fleets for years. And regarding the mako shark, this fleet has implemented a measure that was extremely significant, which is to reduce their catches. And finally, this fleet has complied with European Union regulation of a lot of anti-finning strategies, and it has been asking for its expansion to other countries for years. Now, regarding the action plan that I mentioned earlier, and there's an assessment unit that has to be set up based on the MSC definition with the target species, which, as I said, are a swordfish and a blue shark. Then the stock that we're analyzing and assessing during this first stage is North and South Atlantic. The fishing method is surface longline, and the fishing lead is this European fleet. The 4 actions that we undertake are as follows. First, the harvest strategy and management and interaction with ICCAT and its community and scientific community and other relevant agents. This means that we will create new proposals to improve management, as well as information to ICCAT with the scientific support that we can offer. We will also try to promote the expansion of these anti-finning strategies, and we will support the initiatives that regional fishing companies establish, and we will draw up best practices code. Secondly, we'll deal with the lack of data in fishery-related species, such as mako and ITPs. We're working on bycatches. We will offer data analysis. We're assessing the impact of these in the fishery. We're also writing best practices guide. Thirdly, we will increase onboard observers, both personal as well as electronic, and we'll define a data supply diagram. We will agree on this with the Ministry of Fisheries in Spain. I have to say that this FIP has managed to increase the number of observers from 5 to 12% in just 2 years in this fleet. And the goal right now is to reinforce the observer program of the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Food. And to that end, we will try to compact all of the information that observers can glean on board so that we can disseminate that to other regional fishing organizations. And finally, our last action is to develop and to implement applied research to mitigation techniques. That is why new methods to release birds and turtles are being established. There are devices to that end and different kinds of hooks and baits that will reduce significantly that kind of interaction. And finally, I would like to underline that this webinar is extremely interesting. However, what the FIP is pursuing is to become a facilitating force of this relation between NGOs and the industry. I think that all kinds of confrontations need to be fought, and we need to do so on an equal footing. We believe that environmental legitimacy is a matter for all of us, also the administration. They need to safeguard the equality between NGOs and the fishing industry. So at the end of the day, what we are claiming for is our place within this group of those that need sustainable oceans to ensure both our present and our future. And we invite everyone present here today to join us in this such important challenge for the European fleet. Thank you.
Pedro and Emilio for the very interesting presentation. And now we are running short of time, so I will move into the sixth intervention, and this will be by Rita Sá. Rita is the head of the Oceans and Fisheries Programs of the Associação Natureza Portugal of WWF Portugal. Rita, floor is yours.
Hello, can you see my screen? The
Yes.
presentation? Yeah.
Yes, and we can, and I can hear you. So Rita,
Okay.
everything is set.
Okay. So first of all, I have to thank you for this invitation. It's a big pleasure to me to share with you our learnings and our all the things that we are doing in Portugal with the fishing sector. So what I'm going to present is specifically the work that we are doing together with co-management. But first, I'm trying to change. Oh, okay. So first, I want to present to you our organization. So we belong to WWF. I think everyone knows WWF. But Associação Natureza Portugal it's the partner of WWF in our country, and we are working for a long time, since 1990, in different areas. And since 2018, we create this association to have a legal framework of our work. So oceans and fisheries is one of our conservation areas, and we have lots of different projects to achieve our main goals that are, of course, connected with the WWF conservation strategy. So like you can see, this is one of the biggest project that we have right now, and our oceans and fisheries strategy is organized like you can see in different areas. We have these responsible fisheries, where we can where we include the co-management projects. We are working in seafood consumption, and we are in the 6-year project that are ending now along all Europe, and with different WWF offices, and in marine conservation, where we are we are already did different reports and position papers about sharks and rays, about marine litter, about MPAs, and we are doing some field work with flag species, for example. And now we have a very interesting work with diving schools to know more about the seahorses, Atlantic seahorses. It's a citizen science project. So it's like you can see, we are doing all this work in terms of with our network, the WWF network, and other NGOs platforms, to have more influence and to reach to more people and stakeholders. We do a lot of education actions with different stakeholders. For example, I don't know if you can see, we have this photo with a lots of people. It's for all the staffs of big hotel chains. We have different communications campaigns to different stakeholders, and together with all these different team, we has this double role, has stakeholder from one side, and for other side we have this role as facilitator, and this is what the role that we are developing with our co-management projects. So like I show you, I have shown you, we have these different projects, the biggest projects, and the co-management projects that we have right now, it's Copesca project and Persipesca project. So Copesca project started in 2014. In that time we had the project to identify the potentiality of co-management in the center of the country. We started to identify 6 different fisheries, and then we identified the barnacle catch in Iceland in the center of the country. This fishery include 40 barnacle catchers and is in a marine protected area with the management plan already in place. Of course, the barnacle is a very high value seafood. I don't know if everyone knows what is it, but I think people from Galicia knows very well, but I don't know if people from other countries know what is barnacles, or percebe, like we said in Portuguese, what is it. So since 2015, when we ended this project, we starting to look for fundings to set up this co-management project, and we developed the proposal together with the fishermen, this 40 barnacle catcher, and different stakeholders like scientists, authorities, other NGOs, companies, and so different stakeholders, and we started the project in 2018. Since that, so we are ending the project. Since that, we already had more than 20 meetings with in the working group. So the working group is the bottom photo with representatives from different areas, and we had already had. I think it's not five or six. Sorry, I'm not sure. 5 or 6 general assembly with everyone, and to discuss with all the issues with all the 40 barnacle catcher. We already developed statutes and rules to work with together. We did a report about commercial scenarios to build a common vision about the future of the value of the resources. We develop a checkpoints, so it's like a place where all the barnacles catchers landed the barnacles, and gave to the scientists numbers like the size, the height, the place that they catch the barnacles, everything. We reinforce some things in terms of surveillance. So we put a GPS in all the boats to know where they are catching the barnacles, and it is very important not just to follow to in terms of surveillance, but to follow to know more about the fishery and the fishermen. So it's important too, and to get more data about this. This is for the scientists, and we were discussing the way to have a digital sale when we had this COVID situation. So it was one of the new big things in the process to look for new ways to sell the barnacle. And during the COVID, the first lockdown, our fishermen asked for a moratorium. Sorry, I don't know if I know how to say it, moratorium, to close the fishery, because since the restaurants were all the restaurants were closed, the fishermen felt that it was a very pity to catch the barnacles to has a very bad value. So it was a very nice initiative from the fishermen, and now we have a very strong group, and we are waiting to formalize the management committee, but I will explain more later. The other project is Persipesca project. It's a little different because it's because it's bigger. We have it started in 2020, so last year, during the COVID situation. So, but we have more than 700 fishermen, 14 fishermen association. The octopus fishery in all the south part of Portugal. The octopus has a high value in this area. And almost octopus is sold directly to the Spanish market. And we have lots of EU fisheries issues. So, for example, the octopus is catching by traps, and we know that all the fishermen has lots of traps on sea. So it's one of the problems identified for the fishermen too. So we are trying to find a joint solution for that. So we are starting the participative process. It's not easy because we are in this situation now. So it's not easy to have a participative process without presential meetings, but we are trying to do our best to have it. And we already have several meetings. We already did a survey with all the stakeholders. We already did the stakeholder mapping. Of course, we have a lot of stakeholders, and one of the main results is to be identified that we have two different areas in Algarve. So if the main goal of the co-management committee is to do a management plan for this fishery, it's important to look for this geographical difference and to include in the process, and of course in the management plan, and of course in organizing the meetings. We already has a scientific advisory group with different scientists, not just from Portugal, but from other countries like Spain too. And we are trying to understand what other countries, other scientists, and other fisheries are doing to have a more sustainable management of this fishery. So we are, of course, trying to adapt to all this COVID situation. And we are trying to have like face-to-face meetings instead of group meetings, and to know more and to have more opinions, and to look for these solutions that I already mentioned. So during 2018, it was in the spring of 2018, we had several meetings with the Portuguese government, and we understood that the government was revising the general law for fisheries for Portugal, and they said to us that it was an opportunity to include the co-management in this national law to have the opportunity to formalize co-management committees, and to be sure that these co-management committees are not just like a friendly agreement and friendly decisions. So we did this. So we did the proposal. We sent to the government, and in last year in September, the government published this law with for it. So this is very nice for us because it was it is a work for years, but it's very important for us because there is the possibility to create co-management committees with several rules, of course, and to be sure that this co-management committee will manage the fisheries. So there are some stages that we have to look, like to be sure that the fishermen are engaged to do the proposal of the co-management committee, and then you have to you have to do the management plan together with all the stakeholders, and then you have to send to this management plan to the government to be approved and to be published. So there are some rules, like I said to you, in terms of numbers. We have to be sure that we have 75% of the fishermen of the fishery engaged and supporting the intention of the co-management committee creation, and of course the same for the management plan. Now we are working on the proposal of the law to create the co-management committee for the barnacles in Berlengas, and we are discussing with the stakeholders and with the government what can be the organization of this co-management committee. So we inspired in the SONSU co-management committee in Catalonia, because it's one case that we know very well. We had some fishermen here in Portugal presenting the idea and inspiring our fishermen too. So we are using these learnings to implement here in Portugal. So our idea is to have the co-management committee is has this organization in two different bodies. The first one is the General Assembly with everybody, and is a decision organization. They has the decision. They have to take the decision. And we have this executive commission organized by collectives, fisheries, science, administration, and environmental, that has a facilitator that is outside the decisions and outside the opinions or positions. And these executive commissions develop all the proposals to present to the General Assembly to take the decision. So this is like, one is to work and the other one is to decide. So it's our idea. Now, and I know that we don't have so much time, so I'm trying to be faster. Now we are facing all this COVID situation, and of course we are online like everyone, and so that's why we have this photo, because it's one of the meetings of our co-management committee of barnacles, and one of some problems and some good things is that one of the big the problems is it's the time. This process take a lot of time, we know. To have results, we have to be patient, and is not sometimes is not very it's not easy, not just for the fishermen, but for some authorities or the government. Yeah, we need political will, and this is very important for the local authorities. We need commitment from everyone, and commitment and expectations are not very easy to manage when we have to deal with the time and the time to have results. we need to be sure that we have a transparent process. This is very, very important, and the lack of transparency can put everything, can ruin all the process. And of course, we have to be sure that the representativeness it's clear and it's strong in the different areas. In terms of good things, I think the best one, I think everyone can think in the best things, the good things of co-management. But for me, the best things, it's the way that we can contribute to have a more participative Tory culture in our society, in our country, in our governments, and in our fisheries, together with everyone. So I think it is a joint work. It's not our work, the WWF, but a joint work with everyone. Everyone is during this process are very, very committed. And I think we have to be sure that we can have different positions, but we can work together. But in this kind of process, we have to be very, very. It's very, very delicate. It's very, very. We have to be very careful. Deal with different positions and different because all these relations can be not so clear for everyone. So many thanks. Obrigada. And have a nice webinar.
Thank you very much, Rita. We are approaching the end, and well, we have run short of time for questions. I will first of all ask the indulgence of Mr. Millán to delay for 5 minutes his closing remarks. And we have received 2 questions from the floor. I will make an effort and to select one of the 2 and ask the person from the panel to answer as quickly and as briefly as possible. This is a question from Cornelia Nowen to Catherine Barrett, and it concerns the action of the Irish program concerning the energy balance of the fishing for litter, and what do you do to recycle the lost gear that you recover? Can you answer that as quickly as possible, Catherine?
To assess the energy consumption, but we are doing a carbon footprint process around the fishing, but we don't want them to be, obviously that amount of weight is extra on the fuel burden. So we're trying to factor in that into the carbon footprint analysis. The challenge around the processing of the gear is absolutely immense. And that's why this implementation of the circular economy and tapping into those incentives to make those changes, because the sector in itself cannot recycle. The fishermen can't recycle the harbours. You need the system to change. So that is why we're looking all the time for new synergies outside of the sector to help us with that. Because at the moment, in marine litter in particular, it is more or less going to landfill.
Okay. Muchísimas gracias, Catherine, y también por la brevedad de tu respuesta.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Thank you also for being so concise. And I would like to ask Mr. Millán to close today's event with some final conclusions.
To all the speakers in this event for their valuable insights. It has been very interesting to. Okay. Shall I repeat, or have you understood? Can you listen to me? Yes.
Yes, and
well,
we can see
I
you.
was saying it has been very interesting to get to know all the case studies ranging from Ireland to the States, or from Portugal to South Africa. And now I'm going to continue in Spanish. Como bien decía la consejera del Mar, Rosa Quintana.
As the regional minister, Rosa Quintana, has said, all of the participants here today have the same goal. We are passionate about the sea, its resources, and the people who make a living out of the sea. This is why scientists, public institutions, and NGOs need to attain the same goal and talk the same language. We are friends, not foes, but we need to reinforce our collaboration and join forces. Just like Maya Kirchner has said on behalf of the European Commission, this is part and parcel of the European Green Deal. And transforming the economy for a sustainable future needs to incorporate actively fishing and blue economy. The Clean Oceans Initiative presentation by Catherine Barrett has been very impressive. 244 vessels, many participants in this Fishing for Litter initiative. This is clearly an example for other projects that share a goal. For example, the Mar Limpo goal by the Galician government. This project that has been mentioned by Daniel Formosa from A Coruña that was recently selected as an important practice by the European Parliament on the 25th of March regarding the impact of marine waste and marine litter. Considering the importance of the Marine Defense Fund, we have been able to see that we need to protect deep sea corals. We need to celebrate the initiatives by North American fishers because they have provided specific data that have helped to create a map of the fisheries. We have also talked about different South African initiatives that have been mentioned by Colin Atwood. I wanted to underline how NGOs can complement government actions in different spheres. In many of these projects, we can see very positive results. There has been an impressive reduction of seabird mortality, more than 85% in some cases, if I have understood correctly. So there has been very illustrative to see what fisheries are like in South Africa. Another example of collaboration between different actors are the examples of Muros and Econoia. We can see with these projects that collaborating between many different actors is possible. We have also seen collaboration by different cities, as pointed out by Emilio Martinez Cadilla. Many interesting examples, including, for example, the FIPS, specifically centered in this event on blue shark and swordfish. And I'm also very interested on the incentives and the market aspects that have been discussed. Later on, Rita Sá has shared with us the project of Asociação Natureza Portugal. I come from Galicia, so I am very familiarized with barnacles and octopus. We have heard how fishermen are sometimes criminalized, and it's true that some NGOs talk about fishermen as if they were pirates or they were directly attacking the sea. I have often said that we cannot assume that fishermen are criminals. We need to break with this confrontation dynamics, this narrative. And in this regard, I firmly believe that this kind of events are very useful as dialogue spaces and to end certain negative myths. As I said, we are not foes, we are allies, we are friends in our search for environmental, social, and economic sustainability. Hopefully, this will be the base for future collaboration amongst all of these stakeholders here today. Hopefully, this is just the beginning. And I also want to thank the BCD and the regional government of Galicia for organizing this event. And I also want to thank the moderators and facilitators of this event. Thank you very much. Thank you and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Paco. And after these brilliant words, I don't think we have anything else to say. So thank you everyone for participating and have a very good evening.
Adiós. Thank you.
Boa tarde.
Bye.
Goodbye.